Everyone thought the clumsy maid would step away. Instead, she became the only person who stood between a powerful family and an unforgivable moment. The grand halls of the Caldwell estate had always been a place where people measured each other by status, wealth, and influence. Under the glow of crystal chandeliers and surrounded by polished marble floors, every guest knew exactly who held power in the room. Alexander Caldwell, the white mafia boss known throughout New York for his control and authority, did not need to raise his voice to command attention. His presence alone changed the atmosphere. But on that evening, the person who would leave the strongest impression was not the man everyone feared. It was the Black Maid everyone underestimated. Her name was Olivia Brooks, and most people in the Caldwell mansion knew her only as the quiet young woman who carried trays, organized rooms, and occasionally made small mistakes that others found easy to criticize. She had been called clumsy more times than she could remember. A dropped glass, a misplaced item, a nervous moment during a busy morning. Those were the things people noticed. They never noticed the way she stayed late to help others finish their work. They never noticed how she remembered every detail about Mrs. Caldwell's daily routine. They never noticed that behind her gentle smile was a woman who had spent years learning how to care for people even when life had not been easy for her. Mrs. Eleanor Caldwell was different. Alexander's mother was the only person in the mansion who never looked at Olivia as just an employee. She saw her kindness. She saw her patience. She saw the heart behind the mistakes. That was why Olivia was always grateful for her. But during a private gathering at the Caldwell estate, everything changed. Important guests had arrived. Conversations filled the room, and everyone was carefully watching their words. Olivia moved quietly between the tables, doing her best to make sure everything was perfect. Then a disagreement began near Mrs. Caldwell. The atmosphere shifted. Guests became uncomfortable. Some people looked away, pretending not to notice. Others stayed silent, because they did not want to get involved. Olivia saw Mrs. Caldwell standing there, a woman who had shown her nothing but compassion, facing a moment she did not deserve. And before she had time to think about the consequences, Olivia stepped forward. The entire room froze. The maid everyone overlooked had just made a choice nobody expected. She was not thinking about Alexander Caldwell's reputation. She was not thinking about her own position in the mansion. She was thinking about doing what was right. At that exact moment, Alexander entered the room. He stopped when he saw everyone's expressions. He saw the guests standing silently. He saw his mother. And then he saw Olivia. For years, Alexander had believed loyalty came from fear, respect came from power, and people always acted because they wanted something in return. But the woman standing in front of him had done something that did not fit his understanding of the world. She had nothing to gain, no reward, no advantage, no reason except compassion. And for the first time in a long time, Alexander Caldwell found himself unable to look away. Because the person everyone called clumsy had just shown the kind of courage that money could never buy. After that unforgettable evening at the Caldwell estate, the mansion felt different. The rooms were still filled with expensive furniture, beautiful artwork, and the quiet elegance that came with wealth, but something had changed. The people inside the house were looking at Olivia Brooks differently. The same maid they once dismissed as careless and inexperienced had become the person everyone was talking about. But Olivia did not feel like a hero. She returned to her usual responsibilities the next morning, arranging flowers, preparing rooms, and making sure Mrs. Eleanor Caldwell had everything she needed. She did not expect praise. She did not expect special treatment. In her mind, she had simply done what anyone with a good heart should have done. But Alexander Caldwell saw things differently. From his office window overlooking the estate grounds, he watched Olivia move through the mansion with the same quiet determination she always had. He had spent years surrounded by people who wanted his approval, his money, or his influence. Everyone carefully chose their words around him. Everyone tried to impress him. But Olivia had done something completely different. She had acted without thinking about what she could receive in return. That was something Alexander did not understand. Later that morning, Alexander found his mother sitting in the garden with Olivia nearby. The scene caught his attention because his mother rarely trusted people so easily. "She reminds me of someone," Eleanor said softly when Alexander approached. He looked at Olivia. "Who?" His mother smiled. "Someone who understands that kindness is not a weakness." Alexander remained silent. Those words stayed with him. In his world, kindness was often mistaken for vulnerability. People believed compassion made someone easier to take advantage of, but Olivia had shown him something different. She had remained calm under pressure. She had acted with courage without needing recognition. She had protected someone simply because it was right. Later that afternoon, Alexander asked the house manager about Olivia. "How long has she worked here?" he asked. "Almost 2 years," the manager replied. "And you never thought to tell me about her?" The manager looked surprised. "She never wanted attention, Mr. Caldwell. She just does her work." Alexander looked down at the records in his hand. There were small notes from different employees about Olivia. She had helped new staff members adjust. She had stayed late when others needed assistance. She had quietly solved problems before anyone noticed they existed. None of these things were dramatic. None of them made headlines. But together, they revealed the kind of person she truly was. That evening, Alexander finally spoke with Olivia alone. She stood in front of his office door, unsure why she had been called. "I assume this is about yesterday," she said. Alexander studied her carefully. "Why did you do it?" Olivia looked confused. "Do what?" "Step forward when everyone else stayed silent." Olivia looked toward the window for a moment before answering. "Because Mrs. Caldwell has always treated me with respect." She saw me as a person before she saw me as an employee. Alexander said nothing. Her answer was simple, but it carried a meaning he could not ignore. She had not acted because she wanted to become important. She had acted because someone else mattered. And for the first time, Alexander Caldwell began to question the way he had spent his entire life measuring people. The woman he once barely noticed had shown him a kind of strength he had never found in power, money, or influence. The days after that conversation changed something inside Alexander Caldwell that even he could not fully explain. He was still the same man everyone knew. He still entered rooms with quiet authority, still made decisions that shaped entire businesses, and still carried the reputation of someone who rarely showed emotion. But inside the Caldwell estate, something had shifted. He had started paying attention to the things he once ignored. He noticed the employees who worked before sunrise. He noticed the small details that kept the household running smoothly. And more than anything, he noticed Olivia Brooks. For years, Alexander believed people revealed their true intentions through what they wanted from him. In his experience, kindness often came with expectations attached. A favor was rarely just a favor. A compliment usually had a reason behind it. But Olivia challenged that belief every day without even trying. She never asked for recognition. She never used her actions to gain influence. She simply did what she believed was right. One afternoon, Alexander walked through the east wing of the estate and found Olivia helping organize a room before an important family gathering. Several employees were struggling to prepare everything on schedule, and Olivia quietly stepped in to help. She did not give orders. She did not demand attention. She simply worked alongside everyone else. Alexander watched from a distance as she encouraged a younger employee who was worried about making mistakes. "Everyone learns somewhere," Olivia said gently. "The important thing is that you keep trying." Those words reminded Alexander of something he had forgotten. People were not machines designed to perform perfectly. They were human beings who needed patience and understanding. Later that evening, Alexander sat with his mother in the library. Eleanor Caldwell had always been able to read him better than anyone else. "You are thinking about Olivia," she said. Alexander looked surprised. "How do you know?" His mother smiled. "Because you only become quiet when something challenges what you believe." Alexander looked toward the fireplace. "I do not understand her." "That is because you are used to people wanting something from you," Eleanor replied. "Olivia wants nothing except to do what is right." Her words stayed with him. Alexander had spent years building walls around himself. He believed those walls protected him from disappointment. But now he wondered if they had also prevented him from recognizing genuine people. The next morning, Alexander saw Olivia carrying a box of old family records from storage. He immediately stepped forward to help, but Olivia politely thanked him and continued on her own. It was a small moment, but it reminded him of something important. Olivia was not waiting for someone powerful to save her. She was already strong. That was what made her different. She did not need his position. She did not need his approval. She had something far more difficult to find: self-respect. As the weeks passed, Alexander began learning more about Olivia's life. He discovered that the woman everyone called Clumsy had faced challenges that would have made many people give up. Yet she continued showing compassion to others. She continued choosing kindness, even when life had not always been kind to her. And slowly, the truth became impossible to ignore. The person he once viewed as insignificant was becoming the person who taught him the most. But Alexander still did not know the full story behind Olivia's quiet strength. He did not know the sacrifices she had made or the dreams she had placed aside for others. And soon, that hidden part of her past would reveal why the maid everyone underestimated had always been far stronger than anyone realized. For most of her life, Olivia Brooks had learned that people rarely saw the full story behind a person. They saw the position someone held, the clothes they wore, or the mistakes they made. They rarely looked deeper. That was why Olivia never expected anyone inside the Caldwell estate to understand her past. She had become comfortable being overlooked. But Alexander Caldwell was beginning to see the person everyone else had missed. One quiet morning, while organizing documents in the estate library, Alexander discovered something unexpected. Among the household records was an old recommendation letter with Olivia's name on it. He paused when he saw the details. Before becoming a maid at the Caldwell estate, Olivia had studied hospitality management and had once worked toward a future in restaurant leadership. She had completed advanced training, earned excellent evaluations, and had been recognized for her ability to understand people. Alexander read the pages carefully, realizing that the woman he had watched carrying trays through the mansion had a history far beyond what anyone knew. When Olivia entered the library and saw the papers in his hand, she immediately understood. "You found those," she said quietly. Alexander looked at her. "Why did you never mention this?" Olivia placed a stack of books on the table and thought for a moment. "Because I did not want people to treat me differently because of my past." Alexander was surprised. Most people would want everyone to know. Olivia smiled softly. Most people want to be respected because of what they achieved. I wanted to know if someone could respect me before they knew any of that. Her answer left Alexander silent. He had spent years surrounded by people who introduced themselves through accomplishments, connections, and status. But Olivia was different. She did not hide her achievements because she was ashamed. She simply believed they were not the most important thing about her. Later that afternoon, Alexander spoke with his mother in the garden. "You knew about her background," he said. Eleanor Caldwell nodded. "Of course I did. Why did you never tell me?" His mother looked at him with a gentle expression. "Because then you would have started seeing her because of her accomplishments instead of seeing her because of who she is." Alexander looked away. That sentence stayed with him. He realized his mother had understood something he had missed. Olivia's greatest quality was not her education, her skills, or her experience. Those things mattered, but they were not what made people trust her. It was the way she treated others when nobody was watching. That evening, Alexander found Olivia in the kitchen preparing a small meal for the staff members who had worked late. He watched as she quietly made sure everyone had something to eat before thinking about herself. "You still do things like this even when nobody notices?" he asked. Olivia looked surprised by the question. Why would it matter if someone notices? Alexander did not answer immediately, because deep down, he knew the answer. For years, he had believed recognition was proof of value. Olivia had shown him that some of the most meaningful actions happened in complete silence. As he walked away, Alexander realized something important. Olivia was not extraordinary because she had hidden talents or an impressive past. She was extraordinary because she had remained kind in a world that had given her many reasons not to be. And for the first time, Alexander Caldwell wondered how many other people he had failed to truly see. The days following Olivia Brooks's discovery of her hidden past brought a quiet change inside the Caldwell estate. Nothing dramatic happened on the surface. The same halls remained polished, the same routines continued, and the same employees moved through the mansion each morning. But Alexander Caldwell was no longer seeing the place the same way. For years, he had walked through those rooms believing that loyalty came from authority and respect came from position. Now, he was beginning to understand that the strongest bonds were often created through simple acts of kindness that nobody expected to be rewarded. Olivia continued her work as she always had. She never acted differently because Alexander knew more about her past. She never used his attention as an opportunity to demand a better position or special treatment. That was exactly what made him curious. One afternoon, Alexander asked Olivia to join a small meeting about improvements around the estate. Several employees were surprised when she entered the room. They were used to seeing her carrying supplies, organizing rooms, and helping others behind the scenes. They were not used to hearing her opinions during important discussions. Alexander noticed the uncertainty around the table, but Olivia remained calm. She listened carefully before sharing her thoughts. She suggested small changes that could make daily tasks easier for the staff and improve the overall atmosphere of the household. Her ideas were not complicated. They were based on something much simpler: understanding people. When the meeting ended, one of the senior employees approached Alexander. "She notices things most of us miss," he said. Alexander nodded because he had already realized the same thing. Olivia did not see problems as inconveniences. She saw them as moments where someone needed help. Later that evening, Alexander found Olivia in the garden speaking with his mother. Eleanor Caldwell was smiling in a way Alexander had not seen in years. It was a small moment, but it reminded him of something important. His mother had always valued character above appearances. She had recognized Olivia's heart long before he did. "You trust her," Alexander said after Olivia walked away. Eleanor smiled. "Yes." "Why?" His mother looked toward the garden path where Olivia had disappeared. "Because she has shown me who she is when nobody is watching." Alexander remained quiet. That answer affected him more than he expected. In his world, people often performed kindness when there was something to gain. Olivia was different. Her actions existed even when there was no audience. That night, Alexander found himself thinking about the first time he saw her. He remembered how easily he could have ignored her. He remembered how everyone else saw only a mistake-prone maid instead of a person with dreams, experience, and strength. For the first time, he felt uncomfortable with the version of himself who had made that judgment. The following morning, Alexander called Olivia into his office. She entered carefully, unsure why he wanted to speak. With her, "I want to ask you something," he said. Olivia waited. "Why did you choose to stay in a position where people underestimated you?" She thought about the question before answering. "Because a person's worth does not disappear just because others fail to recognize it." Alexander looked at her silently. It was another simple sentence, but once again, it carried a truth he could not ignore. Olivia had never been waiting for someone to give her value. She had carried it with her all along. And Alexander Caldwell was beginning to understand that the greatest mistake a person with power could make was assuming they were the only one in the room who had something to teach. The moment Alexander Caldwell began to understand Olivia Brooks was the moment he realized how little he had truly known about the people around him. For years, he had believed that leadership meant having all the answers. He believed the person at the top should always have control, always appear confident, and never reveal uncertainty. But Olivia had shown him something different. She had shown him that understanding people required something far more difficult than giving orders. It required listening. As the weeks passed, Alexander started making changes inside the Caldwell estate. They were not the kind of changes that appeared in newspapers or attracted attention. They were small decisions that most people would never notice. He started asking employees for their opinions. He started recognizing the effort behind daily tasks. He started creating an environment where people felt valued instead of simply managed. Everyone noticed the difference, but nobody was more surprised than Olivia. She had never expected her actions to influence someone like Alexander Caldwell. One afternoon, Alexander asked Olivia to accompany him while he reviewed plans for a charity event hosted by the Caldwell family. The event was important because it would support local families in need, and several experienced planners had already provided their recommendations. However, Alexander wanted Olivia's perspective. When she entered the meeting room, some people exchanged uncertain looks. They were still, adjusting to the idea that a maid could contribute to a conversation usually reserved for executives and advisors. Olivia noticed their hesitation, but she did not let it affect her. She studied the plans carefully and listened before speaking. "The event looks organized," she said, "but I think there is something missing." Everyone looked toward her. People will remember how they felt more than what they saw. The details matter, but the experience matters more. The room became quiet. It was not a complicated idea, but it was something many people had overlooked. The planners had focused on schedules, decorations, and appearances. Olivia focused on the people who would be there. Alexander watched the reactions around the table. Once again, Olivia had noticed something others missed. After the meeting, Alexander walked with her through the estate gardens. "How do you always see things others do not?" he asked. Olivia smiled. I think it comes from paying attention. When people do not expect you to have the loudest voice, you learn to notice the things everyone else ignores. Alexander looked at the path ahead. Those words reminded him of his own past. He had spent years making sure his voice was the one everyone heard. But Olivia had spent her life learning how to hear others. That difference changed the way he viewed strength. Later that evening, Alexander sat in his office reviewing the event plans. He noticed that the best ideas were not always the most expensive or impressive ones. The best ideas were often the ones that showed people they mattered. And that lesson came from the woman everyone in the mansion once overlooked. Meanwhile, Olivia continued carrying herself the same way she always had. She did not become arrogant because Alexander respected her. She did not change because others finally noticed her. She remained the same person who stepped forward when someone needed help. And that was exactly why Alexander trusted her more each day. But soon, the entire Caldwell family would face a moment that would reveal just how rare Olivia's loyalty truly was. The Caldwell estate had hosted countless important gatherings over the years, but none would reveal the character of the people inside it more clearly than the evening of the family charity event. The mansion was filled with guests, community leaders, and longtime supporters of the Caldwell family. Every detail had been carefully prepared. The decorations were elegant, the schedule was organized, and everyone expected the night to be a perfect display of generosity and success. But Alexander Caldwell knew something most people did not. The true meaning of the event would not come from what people saw. It would come from how people treated one another when no one was expecting recognition. Olivia Brooks moved quietly through the room, making sure every guest felt welcomed. She was still the same person she had always been. She did not seek attention. She did not try to prove that she belonged among influential people. She simply focused on helping others feel comfortable. Some guests recognized her from previous visits to the estate and still viewed her as just another employee. They did not know about her knowledge, her experience, or the impact she had already made on the Caldwell household. They only saw the position she held. Alexander noticed this immediately. He remembered being the same way. He had once looked at Olivia and seen only a maid. Now he understood how incomplete that view had been. During the event, a small issue caused confusion among the staff. Several employees became nervous because they wanted everything to go perfectly. Before anyone could become overwhelmed, Olivia stepped in. She calmly helped organize the situation, spoke with the team, and reminded everyone that the purpose of the evening was not perfection. It was connection. Alexander watched from across the room as people followed Olivia's guidance naturally. They did not listen because of her title. They listened because they trusted her. That realization stayed with him. Later in the evening, Alexander stood before the guests to thank everyone who contributed to the event. Many expected him to speak about the Caldwell family's history or future plans. Instead, he surprised everyone. Tonight reminded me that the most valuable people are not always the ones standing in the spotlight, he said. The room became quiet. Alexander looked toward Olivia. Sometimes the people who make the biggest difference are the ones who quietly help others without expecting anything in return. Olivia lowered her eyes, uncomfortable with attention, but Alexander continued. There are people who spend their lives being overlooked, not because they lack value, but because others fail to look closely enough. The guests listened carefully. Among them were people who had once dismissed Olivia because of her role in the household. Now they were hearing the truth from the person whose opinion carried the most influence. After the event ended, Alexander found Olivia outside the mansion, looking at the quiet garden. "You never wanted recognition, did you?" he asked. Olivia smiled softly. "Recognition is nice, but it was never the reason I helped." Alexander nodded. He finally understood. Olivia's strength came from something he had spent years searching for in power and success. She had inner certainty. She knew who she was, even when others did not. And that was why her actions carried so much meaning. The people who had underestimated her were beginning to see the truth. The woman they once overlooked had become the person everyone respected. But Alexander knew this was not the end of her story. Because the greatest test of loyalty was not when everything was easy. It was when someone had everything to lose and still chose to do what was right. The quiet days after the charity event brought a new feeling to the Caldwell estate. For the first time in years, the people who worked there felt that their voices mattered. Alexander Caldwell had changed the way he led, and everyone noticed. He no longer walked through the mansion as someone searching for mistakes. He walked through it as someone searching for understanding. But even as the atmosphere improved, there was still one person who remained exactly the same. Olivia Brooks. She continued waking up early, helping others, and carrying herself with the same humility she had always shown. She did not act differently because Alexander respected her now. She did not expect special treatment because people finally recognized her value. That was what impressed him most. One afternoon, Alexander received an invitation to attend a family gathering with several longtime associates. These were people who had known the Caldwell family for many years. They were successful, influential, and familiar with the world Alexander came from. When Olivia arrived to assist with preparations, some guests greeted her politely, but others still looked at her through the same narrow perspective they had always used. They saw her uniform before they saw her character. They saw her position before they saw her person. Alexander noticed immediately. Months earlier, he might have ignored those reactions. But now he understood the damage caused by silent judgment. During the gathering, a conversation turned toward the future of the Caldwell family's charitable efforts. Several guests shared their opinions about what would create the greatest impact. Many ideas focused on appearance, reputation, and public attention. Then Eleanor Caldwell looked toward Olivia and asked, "What do you think?" The room became quiet. Olivia hesitated. She was not used to being asked for her opinion in rooms like this. But after a moment, she answered honestly, "I think people remember how they are treated more than what they receive. A person can forget a beautiful room or an expensive event, but they rarely forget when someone made them feel seen." Alexander watched the reaction around the room. Those simple words carried more meaning than many complicated presentations he had heard throughout his life. Olivia was not speaking from theory. She was speaking from experience. Later that evening, Alexander found her in the hallway after the guests had left. "You realize you changed the entire conversation tonight," he said. Olivia smiled. "I was only answering a question." Alexander looked at her thoughtfully. "That is what makes it different. You never try to prove you are important." Olivia looked down for a moment. "I do not think people should have to prove they deserve respect." Those words stayed with Alexander. He remembered the man he used to be. A man who believed power meant being above others. A man who thought the strongest person in the room was the one everyone feared. Olivia had shown him another kind of strength. The strength to care. The strength to listen. The strength to remain kind without expecting anything in return. As the evening ended, Alexander stood by the mansion entrance watching Olivia leave. He realized something that surprised him. The person who had entered his life as a simple maid had become the person who helped him understand what true leadership meant. But he also knew that respect was not proven by private thoughts or quiet admiration. Soon, there would come a moment when he would have to show everyone exactly how much Olivia's loyalty and character truly meant. The moment Alexander Caldwell had been preparing for arrived sooner than he expected. The Caldwell estate hosted another important gathering, but this time the atmosphere was different. The guests who entered the mansion were the same kind of people Alexander had known his entire life. They were influential, successful, and used to being respected wherever they went. But they were also the same people who had once looked at Olivia Brooks and seen only her position instead of her character. Olivia moved through the room quietly, helping prepare the evening as she always had. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was not waiting for approval. She simply remained the same person who had always treated others with patience and kindness. Alexander watched from across the room, remembering the woman everyone had overlooked. He remembered the first night she stepped forward to protect his mother. He remembered how surprised he had been that someone with so little power in the eyes of others could show so much courage. During the evening, a discussion began about the future of the Caldwell Family Foundation. Several guests shared their opinions about leadership, influence, and success. Many believed that the most important qualities were wealth, reputation, and connections. Alexander listened carefully before he finally spoke. "I used to believe the same thing," he said. The room became quiet. Everyone turned toward him. Alexander was not a man who often admitted he had been wrong. "I thought strength came from having control over others. I thought respect came from being the person everyone listened to." He paused and looked toward Olivia. "But I learned that true strength comes from understanding people, especially the ones others choose not to see." Olivia looked surprised. She never expected Alexander to speak about her in front of everyone. He continued, "Some people spend their lives proving their value because the world refuses to notice it. Olivia never did that. She never demanded recognition. She never asked anyone to see her differently. She simply showed who she was through every action." The room became silent. The people who had once dismissed Olivia had no response. They could not deny the truth because they had witnessed it themselves. The woman they had considered insignificant had been the person who brought compassion into a house built around power and reputation. After the gathering ended, Alexander found Olivia near the garden entrance. The evening air was calm, and the lights from the mansion reflected across the path. "You know you changed this family," he said. Olivia smiled gently. "I did not change anyone. I just reminded people of something they already knew." Alexander looked at her thoughtfully. "What is that?" "That every person deserves to be treated like they matter." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Alexander realized that Olivia had never needed a powerful person to give her importance. She had carried her own worth from the beginning. He had simply been fortunate enough to finally recognize it. Years later, people would remember the story of Alexander Caldwell and Olivia Brooks not because of wealth, influence, or status. They would remember it because a man who believed power defined people learned that character defined them more. The maid everyone underestimated became the person who changed an entire household. And the mafia boss who once looked for strength and control discovered it in kindness, humility, and respect. That day, everyone remembered that true dignity does not ask to be noticed. It simply reveals itself when the world finally chooses to look.